All right. So again, hello everybody, and welcome to our first ever MCJ Action event. We are so grateful you're here. So this series, it's something new we're trying. It's a collaboration between MCJ Collective and Climate Changemakers. MCJ Collective is an entrepreneurial commons that exists really to break down silos and unleash problem-solving capacity to advance climate solutions. And Climate Changemakers is a community of volunteer climate advocates who push for bolder, faster, and more just climate leadership in our government that meets the scale and urgency of the climate crisis. My name is Cody Sims. I'm a partner at MCJ Collective and a co-founder of Climate Changemakers.
And hi, everyone. I'm Eliza Nemser, co-founder and executive director of Climate Changemakers. So we have a very special guest today for this event, Adam McKay. Adam is an American film writer, a producer, screenwriter, and comedian. He is the producer, writer, and director of the Netflix hit film, Don't Look Up, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, and Meryl Streep. He's currently got a series on HBO called Winning Time about the 1980s Showtime era of the LA Lakers. Who else is old enough to remember that? And his prior work includes Vice, The Big Short, Anchorman, Talladega Nights, and many other projects.
And I'm in the middle of Winning Time right now, and it's awesome. We're so thrilled, Adam, to have you here for this event. Those of you who don't know, Adam's a dedicated advocate for climate action. So much so that he worked closely with Netflix to create a powerful action hub for Don't Look Up. And that action hub contains a number of helpful resources, really to help all of us try to do more to channel our climate concern into climate actions. And actually, Climate Changemakers is one of the action groups that's highlighted on the hub. And here we'll share the link to the action hub here in the chat if it's something you haven't seen and you want to check out.
And today is about talking and then about walking the talk. So this is how the event's going to work. Cody and Adam will spend the next 35 minutes or so chatting so we can all get to know Adam better. What were his light bulb moments that pushed him into climate action? How is he using his huge following and platform to make a difference on climate? What role does he think people with influence have in making a difference? So they're going to tackle those topics more. And then Adam and I are going to do something really fun and different. We are going to take action together live with all of you. We are going to demonstrate calling our senators to push for climate action. And we're going to use a script. We're going to share it with all of you. And then we're all going to do that very same thing. So it's going to be this big, giant experiment in collective climate action. Maybe jamming up the US congressional switchboard, maybe not. Let's see. But whether this go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, if this is your first time calling a congressional office or your 50th, it's all good. Frankly, it can sound kind of intimidating, but it's actually pretty easy. Hopefully you'll see how easy it can be and how impactful it can be.
And it will be easier for all of you because you'll be muted and you will not be demonstrating to the rest of us all. So it's the hard part is on Adam and I. But with that, let's welcome Adam McKay and Cody. Adam, over to you, and I will be back soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Eliza. We'll see you back in a minute. Adam, welcome. Thanks so much for doing this with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is great.
Awesome. Well, listen, I've got a whole bunch of questions for you. I've crowdsourced some from Twitter, from our MCJ member community, from our Climate Changemakers member community. And, people can feel free to post questions in the chat and we'll try to get to those too. We've only got about 30 minutes. So obviously this is going to fly by. So I'd love to start at the top. How did climate change make its way to your key issues list?
Yeah, well, my entry point was an entry point that I think a lot of us had, which was An Inconvenient Truth. I watched that, and it went from something I was vaguely aware of to something I would say I went into the poll numbers to maybe not, more than somewhat concerned, probably full-on concerned. And then it was about, 4 years ago when that UN report came out, the IPCC report. And I'm trying to remember what we were doing, but I started reading the summaries of it. And I was shocked. I kept rereading the summary. I actually went to the report and started reading it. And, there's a lot of horrific side effects to our social media landscape. But one of the positives is that I had some connections to some climate scientists. And after reading that report, I started asking them questions. And all the answers I got were far from comforting. And then right after that, I read Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells, and I was in a full froth and kept double and triple checking, like I must be missing something. And the big thing for me was the time frame that, when I had seen the Al Gore movie, I think like a lot of us, I thought it was 100 years away. A lot of the time frames were talked about that. But as we all know, the time frame is shrinking and shrinking to the point where a couple weeks ago, it was 70 degrees Fahrenheit above average in the Antarctic. And then on top of that, I was really alarmed by how little collective discussion there was going on in our culture, and really baffled by it. And, because I work in movies and TV, I have some friends who do that as well in the news world. And I kept asking them, what's going on? And once again, the answers I got were not comforting. So yeah, that was probably about 3 years ago, maybe almost 4. And that's when I started losing sleep.
That Uninhabitable Earth hit me hard too. I remember there was a New York Magazine article on it right as the book came out that I skimmed through, and it was jarring to say the least. I'm curious, you went from sort of concern and sort of seeing a documentary by Al Gore about it. How did you go from there to deciding to do a work of fiction? So, how did Don't Look Up, what's the backstory of how Don't Look Up came to be? Obviously I know Leonardo DiCaprio prides himself on being a big environmentalist. Is this something the two of you, cooked up together, or did you bring it to him? What was the whole backstory on the film?
So I think a lot of once you really take in the urgency of the climate crisis, once it really gets in your bones, it's a very different experience from just viewing it as an issue, one of many issues out there, which I think, unfortunately, a lot of our elected leaders and media, some of the media view it that way. And once you really realize how much the time frame is crunching, it becomes really alarming. And it started to become something that I just was talking about constantly, asking questions about, reading about. And at that moment, the idea of doing a movie, I produce and I direct and I write. But as far as the movies I write and direct, the idea of doing a movie that I was going to write and direct and spend 2 years on that in some way didn't address this seemed preposterous to me. So that was really what came of it. And I went on a search for, I must have written down about 6, 7 different ideas for how to do a feature film about this. And my entire goal was, how do you connect with as many people as possible? And I had a bunch of ideas. Some were dramatic, dystopic, character-based, compositional, all kinds of different genres. And it really came out of, in a strange way, it really came out of laughing with my friend who's a reporter, David Sirota, and we were commiserating about the lack of coverage about, what arguably, well, almost inarguably is the greatest threat to life in human history. And he made a joke about it. It's like a comet's going to hit Earth and no one cares. It's like the movie Armageddon, only no one reacts. And I realized that was the way to get over it because, everyone's heard the sort of raw science, but the idea that laughter, it's just the greatest truth detector there is. And I knew everyone wouldn't go for it, but I thought it had the best chance to really reach a wide audience. And then when we collided with Netflix, it was really the kind of perfect marriage. And then Leonardo DiCaprio came in. So we were able to combine these big stars with arguably the greatest distribution machine that's ever existed, Netflix. And it was amazing to see. By some estimates, 350 to 400 million people have seen the movie. The responses have been incredible from upwards of 90, 95 different countries, as diverse as Pakistan, Nigeria, Vietnam, like on and on and on, not to mention America. It really struck a chord. It was really very heartening to see there were a lot of people out there that were feeling the same way.
You know, I'm so interested that you sort of mentioned that it started as a joke about, you know, what if a comet hit, no one cared. I've got a friend that, you know, I think he's in the audience, Chris Ordahl, who has said for a while, like, we need a Jon Stewart of climate. Like, we need someone who isn't so serious, but actually finds the satire in it. And to some extent, I mean, that's what Don't Look Up is. And, you know, you've made a ton of comedies in the past, from Anchorman to Talladega Nights. You know, Don't Look Up, I guess you could say, is kind of a dark comedy. You know, how do you, everything about climate is so grim. Like, what role do you think comedy has in helping us understand what's going on in the world broadly?
So in the middle of making the movie, I just happened to bump into a book called Deep Survival, which is a great read. Maybe some of you have read it. And I just thought it looked interesting. It's a guy, I think his name's Gonzalez, who studies how certain people survive extreme situations. And he spent years studying this, people that were lost in the wild, people that were lost at sea. There was one story of a girl who fell out of a plane, and these crazy stories. And I read the book, and we were making Don't Look Up. But one of the top things that he talks about is keeping a sense of humor. And he talks about how, like, you can't have a sense of humor without perspective. And it's really interesting that in the last 5 to 10 years, you've seen this drop off with comedy happen. Like, they're just, you know, I came up during the 90s and the early 2000s when there was a comedy every 3 weeks, and Jon Stewart, like you said, and great stand-ups like Chris Rock. And it's weird that the last 5 to 8 years, you've seen this kind of dearth of comedy. And I think that's, you know, like, you're able to laugh at a monkey from like 50 feet away, but when the monkey's on top of you, it's not so funny. So I think humor is really important. In fact, I try, and even going into talking with you today, I was like, I always remind myself, because you can get real grim with this climate emergency. Yeah. Keep your sense of humor. Keep your sense of humor. It means you have perspective.
And who do you think is doing a good job on the climate communication front right now? You know, I love, there's a guy who does short YouTube videos called Climate Town that I think are pretty funny. You know, I'm curious who you've seen try to tackle this in an effective way, and or, you know, who should we be paying attention to kind of follow the path, other than the work that obviously you're doing here?
Well, I'm going to check out Climate Town. I hadn't heard of that.
You definitely should. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. I mean, a lot of the best people I see are on Twitter and different social media outlets. Kate Aronoff is really sharp, but also really funny. She makes me laugh, but yet at the same time, she's a hardcore journalist. There's a guy named Alex Steffen who's really funny. Dave Roberts is super acerbic, funny. I mean, these are fairly serious journalists, but I noticed they all are able to keep their sense of humor. But I think we're kind of inching our way towards, you're just starting to see, even Chris Rock's new stand-up set he's doing, he's openly talking about how America's kind of collapsing. And I remember 5-6 years ago, if you had said that, you would have been considered, you know, a dark extremist. And, you know, so we're starting to come to terms with this inflection point that we're in. So I really think it's the next 5 years that you're going to see a ton of it. I've seen some stand-ups do some good stuff about climate, but there's not a ton of it. And in general, comedy's been kind of beaten up in the last almost decade. So, but yeah, I do notice the really sharp voices online still are funny. And I think it's so important.
And you know, to some extent, you've also caught some flack from that, right? From the climate community, from other people saying like, oh, this isn't the best metaphor that could possibly be made in the history of ever. Like, I'm curious how you feel the reception has been from the climate community, and how the climate community and the entertainment community can learn from each other around sharing this information and communicating, how we all should act.
Yeah, like, well, it's a movie. So, and not only is it a movie, it's a comedy, and then it's an unusual comedy in that it breaks the rules of comedy. So you're never going to have 100% consensus. Right away, when you're a comedy, sense of humor is subjective. So you lose 20% of your audience. Even with the best comedies I've ever done, you lose 20% immediately. So we kind of knew that there's never going to be anything you can make that would just, create this perfectly formed regiment of opinion. And I don't know if we would want that. I mean, the funny one was I did hear the complaint about it's not the perfect metaphor. And I would tell people, I was like, the whole idea is that we're dealing with two hyper objects right now. The eco-philosopher Timothy Morton describes, a lot of you are probably familiar with him, describes climate change as a hyper object, in that it's hyper relative, it's hard to comprehend the scale of it. And really what we're looking at right now, in my opinion, is not a crisis about climate, it's actually a crisis about our reaction. Because we have the science to solve the climate emergency. So that was what we tried to do with this movie. We tried to eliminate the climate and just make it a singular event, a comet, which is nothing like the climate crisis, and focus on our bungled catastrophic response. But yeah, like I said, I mean, we're in very confusing times. Everything is subjective. Everyone's trying to interpret. The reception from the climate community was wonderful. A lot of just really heartening responses. A lot of people saying, I feel seen. A lot of scientists reaching out. It was very cool. Are there some people in the climate community who didn't feel like it was the right movie? Sure, but that's cool too. I would encourage everyone to, if you didn't feel like it got the message across, please go push the message that you feel like we need to hear, because it ain't going to be one movie.
Amen to that. I think, I have nothing to add to that. Thanks for saying it. And, hey, it's going to require communicating on all different fronts, I think, I guess is the response I would say.
It's really, when you look at it, the fact that renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels, the fact that we know what the answer is the most crazy part of this. It's not like the Black Plague. It's not even like the beginning of the Cold War, where we were so ignorant to the new power that we had unveiled. Yeah. We know exactly what the answer is. I mean, the steps are not hard. All of us on this talk right now could probably hash it out in about 4 or 5 hours. And that's both what's so horrifying about what we're dealing with. And it's also incredibly darkly funny that we're really going to do this. Like, that we've been warned for decades. I mean, you guys know it's come out that Richard Nixon had memos on his desk about the climate emergency. It's been forever that we've known about this. You've seen the original scientific writing from the late 19th century, where scientists figured out that you can't burn fossil fuel without creating a catastrophic greenhouse effect. So it reminds me of some of the best kind of most messed up comedy from like the 1930s and 40s, W.C. Fields, where, the Three Stooges, where they just walk into the fate of their demise blindly and confidently. And so, yeah, but you know, you got to take action. You got to be sane about it. You got to let the feelings go into your muscles and bones and inhabit the reality, because there's so many forces out there through, you know, whether it's television or social media or political leaders or lobbying or marketing, that want us to ignore this overwhelming reality so they can keep making profits, quarterly profits. It's really deranged.
Well, the political leaders one is one we're going to definitely spend some time on today. But I'm curious, what resources do you think storytellers need to be more effective here?
Well, you know, once again, it's an almost incomprehensible situation that we're looking at. And it reminds me so much of the 07-08 financial collapse, which obviously, you know, through Michael Lewis's book, we did a lot of research on. And the thing I kept seeing with that over and over again was that it was incomprehensible to the people who were involved. They kept saying, well, the housing market is always solid. The housing market is always solid. And what they didn't realize is you're only talking about 100 years of sample size. And what, mankind's been around for 250, 300,000 years. The planet's, how old is the planet? 6 billion years or something like that? How pathetic that I didn't know. Is it 6 billion or 7 billion? I forget. There's 7 billion people on the planet. I think the planet is like 5.5 billion years old. There we go. But anyway, so storytelling is going to be a major part of this. I mean, everything's going to be. Accounting, medicine. I mean, anything that anyone listening to this does for a living, you're a part of it. I'm a climate filmmaker. You're a climate dry cleaning shop owner. Like whatever it is going to be a part of this, much like World War II, or, you know, I just read the Eric Larson book, The Splendid and the Vile, and you look at that mobilization that Britain did once they went to war with England. And it reminds me of what we're going to have to do, only times a million. So storytelling is, you know, I'm sure a lot of us have read Sapiens, where the theory is that storytelling and myth is what separates us from our primate cousins, that it's really powerful. It means a lot. And storytelling, unfortunately, has been weaponized against us over the last 40 or 50 years. I mean, check out Dark Money by Jane Mayer, or Invisible Hands by Kim Phillips Faines, or Democracy Unchained by Nancy McLean. I mean, we know that storytelling has been weaponized against us, or the documentaries of Adam Curtis. So I think it's going to be really important.
You know, I'm going to move to a couple of audience questions, because one of them sort of hits on the thread you were just getting at. I've got a question that came through Twitter from @ESGArchitect. And one of the things he wants to know is if there's room for a climate story that is essentially Don't Look Up plus The Big Short, right? So one that focuses on the boardroom and investors and how they are or aren't reacting to climate risk. Like, you know, I assume the answer is yes. I don't know if you've thought through like what that might look like, or how that might be different from stories that have been told to date.
100%. I mean, I like, one of the things I keep hitting on this, and it's one of the things we need to think about, is the language we use, because first and foremost, with the negligence of our corporate boardrooms, that's malfeasance. That's fiduciary irresponsibility. And that's the language that our boardrooms respond to. I don't know how many people saw the Hulu series on the Sacklers. Dopesick was really incredible and went into the micro of it, showed the political intertwining with the corporate, with the media. I think that would be an incredible movie. I mean, we're working on, through our production company, Hyperobject Productions, we're working on a fair amount of climate projects. And I can tell you one of the ones we're working on is that famous story of in the late 70s, when they realized how catastrophic it was going to be, and the oil companies into the 80s decided it was cheaper not to take action, which we'll see, but may end up being the greatest crime against mankind ever. So Amy Westervelt did an incredible podcast on it called Drilled that I highly recommend. There's a couple other stories, versions of that story, but hell yeah, there's room for so many versions of the climate story. I mean, thousands and thousands. You look at the Vietnam War, someone told me recently there's been 8,000 books written, accounts or fictional stories of the Vietnam War have been written. And you think about the scope of the Vietnam War, and then you look at the climate emergency. I think we're going to reach a point in 5 years, hopefully sooner, where everything is going to be tied to it, where it'll be crazy not to do a story where it's not incredibly hot, where there's not a tornado in the background, where you're going to maybe even see, like, Marvel movies have to include this radically changing climate.
You know, I've been saying for a while that I think the three big levers of climate action are obviously power, right? You know, changing policy, money, like how does money move, and how is it informing where climate is going, and storytelling, which obviously is everything you've been doing. I'm really curious on the power and story side. We've talked about the money and story side. On the power and story side, one of our community members, Yin Liu, asked, in what ways have Hollywood and DC sort of changed their interactions around climate over the last decade or two? Like, have you seen progress there at all, and or what should happen if not, or what needs more to happen there?
You know, I would say everyone likes to think that Hollywood is so separate from the rest of America or the world, but the truth is it's not. It's incredibly reflective of what's going on. The good news is I've seen Los Angeles / Hollywood wake up to the way we behave. There are a lot of really responsible sets that are green sets. A lot of people have shifted to electric vehicles. You will see electric vehicles everywhere in Los Angeles, solar power. So there's a lot of great personal change. But I think we're at the beginning of the larger change of the stories we tell. I mean, it would be an interesting, maybe someone's written the book, to look at the dawning of new ages in the last century and to see when Hollywood sort of starts telling those stories. I would be curious, but I feel like we're going through that entryway right now. But you know, I would say Los Angeles / Hollywood fits in with a lot of America in the sense that climate denial is much lower than it was. I think the number is like 7%, but the scary chunk when you look at the poll numbers is the somewhat concerned, because actually that's the chunk that's killing us. And that's where a lot of LA and Hollywood kind of fits in. People are smart, they know it's real, but they don't totally know the time frame. They don't totally know the effects. They don't know about, you know, wet bulb events. They don't understand that the power grid within 4 or 5 years is going to start to, you know, be knocked out on a regular basis. We've already seen the flooding in New York City, how close this is. So no, I think Hollywood reflects the country and the world in a lot of ways.
Well, and on that note, you know, Hollywood does do for sure is reach the general public a lot better than, you know, DC and politics do, and, you know, I would say, you know, clearly better than you know, sort of financial elites do as well. And so, you know, one of our community members, Teague Sullivan, wants to know what you think the best way, Hollywood regardless, Hollywood aside, like, what do you believe the best way is to motivate the general public to take climate action? And what actions do you see as being the most impactful?
So, you know, one big thing I think about, and man, oh man, have I thought about this a lot over the past 5 months, because we have this crazy press, movie / climate press tour that I've never been involved in anything like it. That just was on and on and on, and talking to political leaders and groups, and then also doing movie stuff. And the big thing I really kind of learned from it was that a lot of people just don't know. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was at a dinner with a bunch of really smart people, and I brought up the event in the Arctic and the Antarctic, where the Antarctic, 70 degrees above normal. And 4 or 5 people around me were like, I hadn't heard that. That's crazy. I mean, that's a broken communication system. So, we're in this closed loop. Big money has like tightened America so much, where our news has been captured by big corporations, where print, online journalism, for the most part. I mean, there are people out there doing great work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pointing fingers at individuals. I'm talking about a systemic problem. And then you go to the political leaders who are, there was a Princeton study on this. They're almost entirely motivated. I think the number was like 95% by their donor money. So you have a political class that is completely cut off from the will of the people. You have a media that has been captured by a lot of big profitized corporations. And then you have a people that aren't getting the information that they need. So I actually never point to the people because I find that when I talk to people, and we have this with Don't Look Up, they get it. As soon as they hear the real facts, that dinner I was at, when I said that, everyone went, oh my God, and started asking questions, but they just hadn't heard it. So when you talk about breaking through this wall of inaction, which I think is really what your question was, I think the trick is, is to behave differently, to like show that it's not a regular issue. You're not talking about raising the minimum wage, which, by the way, I'm very passionate about. You're not talking about limiting big money in politics, which I'm very, this is scary. It should have more of the tone of voice you would have if you were warning a bunch of people that there's a shark in the water. Like, it's time to like not act cool. And all I see when I see our leaders and our media talk about it is an extreme effort to act professional and cool. This is one of those stories. When they said Pearl Harbor was bombed, no one did a detailed, foreign policy analysis in their headline. It was just Pearl Harbor attacked. And that's what we need. We need big, bold headlines. We need just the right amount of panic in there. And we need to see our leaders like show that they're afraid. And I think the same for us too. I really made an effort to just not be cool, to like not act like I know what the hell I'm talking about. I am freaked out. I am losing sleep. I am changing all my behaviors. I am like annoying my friends and family. Like, I am not being cool, because the idea of being cool and like treating it like an issue, I think is contrary to what the message is. By the way, I'm sweating right now because it's so freakishly hot right now in Los Angeles. I think it's like 93 degrees out right now in early April. But anyway, so yes, I'm sweating and I'm not cool.
I identify closely with your notion that my friends and family are probably annoyed with how much I talk about this, but it's that important to me, and it takes all of us to continue to do it, to make, tap on the shoulders and make it that much more important to the next person. All right, this is the last one for me. When was the last time, before maybe 2 minutes from now, that you called your representative about an issue?
I mean, for me, I think it was when the big omnibus bill stalled, and that included climate spending. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but remember way back when the House put the bill out and the Senate had stalled in the Senate, and everyone's blaming Manchin and Sinema. Don't get me wrong, they're a major part of the problem, but I think we're all suckers if we believe it's just the two of them. It's the whole system. So when that first stalled, I called a bunch of people. I even called out-of-state people, and I just let it fly. I mean, my approach is unusual. I talk to the staffer that's answering. I literally say, I know you're a staffer. I know you work there. This is the one that should separate from all the other issues. We are going to die. There are going to be fires, wet bulb events, floods, crazy hurricanes. And it's like within, 7, 8, 10 years and maybe 20 years from truly catastrophic, hundreds of millions of people dying. So I just, when I just said I'm not being cool about it, that those were the messages I left. I think I called 8 people in one day. By the way, probably, it makes just a little sand pebble of difference, which is good. But boy, did I feel good afterwards. I unloaded, and we each need to throw our sand pebble into the pile. It's really important. I also know from working in television that those kinds of phone calls, they're the equivalent of, like, they have a metric for it. They're the equivalent of something, I think it's like 300 voters each phone call represents. So they do pay attention. It really does mean something. The only thing that's tough is I called some out-of-state people and they were like, you're not a voter. But the California ones got back to me, and pretty quickly. So no, this is a good thing to do. In fact, I'm excited about our conversation today because I almost feel like I should commit to like 30 straight days of calling every day, sort of like when you're trying to get into shape and you're going to walk a mile every day. I actually, in fact, I'm going to do it. I'm committing.
I was about to say almost sounds like you're there.
I'm committing to it right now. I am going to
love it.
30 straight days of every single day. I will call. It may be multiple times for the senators. My congressman's pretty good. I got Ted Lieu around here. He's a good guy. He gets climate change, but I'm still going to call him. And I'm going to do it 30 straight days.
Adam, thank you so much. I don't need to say anything more other than hand you over to Eliza, who is now going to let you do that in front of everybody. And then we're all going to do it together. So thanks for being a leader in this space. Thank you for all that you're doing to create a mainstream voice to the thing that all of us here care so much about, and that we all need to care about because it affects all of us and all of our futures. So,
Cody,
appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for hosting this, co-hosting this with Eliza, and thank you for everything you do. Like I said, we're entering a new era where, the cool thing about this challenge is it is going to usher in a redefinition of how we view our relationships with each other. And we're coming out of an era of just colossal inequality. And necessarily, as part of meeting the climate challenge, it's going to involve equality. And I'm excited about that part of it. There's a lot of good things with this challenge. We really are going to reinvent civilization, our relationship with each other, and it's going to happen because it has to. So as upset as I can get, there's a lot of really exciting things with this challenge. But anyway, thank you, Cody.
All right, Eliza, over to you.
I am so excited. I'm so here for this 30-day micro challenge, Adam. And let me just say that one of basically the whole concept of Climate Changemakers was we need to dial up civic engagement on climate. And it can't be a one-off thing. It's got to become a habit. So our whole model is an hour of action every week. It's like, we can't click our way through this. We've got to put some skin in the game. Effective advocacy actually takes some time. Let's make this a weekly habit. We're each other's gym buddies, that kind of thing. So maybe when we're outside the 30-day challenge, which I'm here with you. I think a lot of us are here with you on the 30 days. Let's hit the every week, once a week. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that conversation. That was excellent. And I am fired up for day one of the Adam McKay 30-day challenge. And here's what we're going to do. We are going to call, everybody, first I will demonstrate, and then Adam will demonstrate, and then we will all call the U.S. Congressional Switchboard. We'll ask to be connected to one of our senators, and we will ask them to pass the $555 billion in climate investments that were already passed by the House, right? So this is no-brainer legislation that would put the US on track to meet our emissions targets under the Paris Agreement. And as Adam mentioned, we all know very well that certain senators are playing an outsized role in blocking the legislation, but Adam also said very well, there's a role for every single senator to play, and every one of them can do more in championing the climate provisions and negotiating with their colleagues, right? And there's a role for every single one of us, whether we're in California or Texas, as constituents to advocate and push for these leaders to do everything in their power. So everything in their power goes way beyond voting the right way, right? That's like way beyond that. And Adam, one thing you and Cody didn't touch on, and let's touch on right here now, a lot of people are not engaged. And maybe it's the cool factor. There's other things going on. I want to hear what you think some of the big reasons people are not engaged and checked out.
It's a great question. I think it's the question. And once again, I go back to communication. And I'm a big fan of, like, especially when you're dealing with something like this, one of the ways that vested interests and corrupt money stop action is they make things complicated that are actually really simple. And in the case of the climate emergency, it couldn't be more simple.
Yep.
The IPCC report, which is 90 different nations, and from the UN, it is very conservative. They haggle over those, each of those countries. Once again, probably all you people on here already know this, but it's very conservative. They said, we have a clock, we have a threshold clock, and we're now at 7.5 years. And when we go past that point, if we haven't curbed emissions dramatically, we are headed towards a potentially extinction level event. 7.5 years. I repeat it over and over again to everyone. And the media is not making that clear. They leave the time frame out. So I think that's the single reason that you're not seeing this engagement, is that in our movie, we had a comet that was 6 months. This is 7.5 years. There's a really strong, clear number tied to it with a lot of science behind it.
Okay, for sure. There's also the massive role that the fossil fuel industry and their lobby has played in disinformation. There's a lot of reasons. There's also, so the Yale Center on Climate Change Communication has done a great deal of polling on this, right? And they've found that there's a good third of folks willing to take action if they were asked by someone that they like and respect. So there's the, have you been asked? There's the, I don't know where to plug in, I don't know where to start. And then, frankly, so like we're all here, we're asking, we're not cool anymore. We're asking, we're giving folks a place to start. But there's this like, why bother? Why bother? My electeds are strong on this. Why bother? My electeds are never going to be good on this. But that's honestly a BS excuse too. Each and every one of our electeds need to hear from their constituents on them. And there's more that all of them could do. So I just want to let's get that out there. There's a great reason to bother. And it's not just like the pebble. It's the, oh, I did that. What can I do next? Wait, I can make a
why bother one,
yeah,
just to me is a big tell that the person doesn't really understand what we're headed towards. Okay. I mean, that really is like driving your car and saying, why bother hitting the brakes? Like, why bother, when I swim, why bother keeping myself buoyant? Like it just, to me, when people say that, or the other one I hear a lot is, when they say, why bother because my elected officials are doing it or whatever, that to me is just a tell. And I'm not judging the person. It just means they haven't heard the right information. Okay. And I would say the other one I hear a fair amount, you see it online, is it's already too late. Okay. And that's another one where I'm like, I don't think you know what the particulars are. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us have read Ministry of the Future, that great book that describes a wet bulb event very graphically in the top. But the too late thing, once again, you would not say. If you were, in the water drowning and someone came to rescue you, you would never wave your hand and go, it's okay, it's too late. Like, no, you do everything you can once that survival instinct kicks in. So,
that's right.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are big tells that there's some information missing.
That's right. Okay, so we're gonna do it now. And again, like, calling is really, really, really important. It's also kind of like a gateway to the other forms of constituent advocacy. But let's start with these phone calls. So I'm gonna demonstrate first. Embarrass myself. Gabrielle is going to screen share our script and the phone number, and I will likely get a voicemail because of the time of day. And but that's okay, because human beings listen to the voicemails. Staffers listen to the voicemails, and it's literally their job to report to their bosses. So this is worthwhile. Okay. And quickly, I just want to say that we've baked this all into the script, but there are empirical data on best practices for what makes an effective call. So there's three big things. One is it has to be personal and unique because it's got to be sticky and memorable, right? So Adam, your call is going to be different from my call, right? We're going to follow a script, but we're going to riff a little. And we're going to make it unique by rolling in something specific to our own experience or identity. Number two is we need to have a specific ask that's baked in. And number three, it needs to say why that ask makes a difference, also baked in. So I realize it's ironic for me to be giving Adam McKay a script. I also just want to say that. And here I go. I am going to call my Senator Feinstein's office. And I happen to have tried this earlier, know that her voicemail is full. So I'm calling a state office. So with the congressional switchboard, if you want to be connected to Padilla, that would work. Feinstein, we're going to need a state office number because I don't want a full voicemail.
By the way, how hilarious that Feinstein's voicemail was full. That was really funny.
All right, wish me luck here. I'm doing this. I'm doing it. It's ridiculous, frankly, that it's full. This is how we do it in front of some people looking pretty cool.
Thank you for calling the office.
You guys can hear?
Feinstein. We apologize for missing your call. If you would like to leave a message, please leave your name and zip code. If you are calling regarding casework, please leave your name, phone number, and the federal agency you need assistance with, and we will be happy to give you a call back. You may also email casework information to casework.
Okay, you all see the script. I'm going to embellish a little.
Thank you.
You'll see where I'm going to embellish. Hi, my name is Eliza Nemser, and I am a constituent calling from San Francisco, California. I am calling to urge Senator Feinstein to please do everything in her power to pass the proposed $550 billion in climate investments that have already passed the House. Doing that would put the US on track to meet our emissions goals under the Paris Agreement, and we are fast running out of time to deliver on that commitment. So as a constituent, this is really extremely important to me because I'm a geoscientist. I know the extent to which we've disrupted the physics. The science is abundantly clear. And I'm also a mom. And I have trouble even imagining the 2030 version of California wildfires. And I want to protect my own kids and all the kids, all the vulnerable lungs from toxic air pollution. So I know that if we act now, we can avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis, and we can't delay. So now is the time for the senator to please use all of her negotiating power, all of her influence, and make sure we pass the bill. Thank you so much for passing along my concerns, and please thank the senator for her service and for her leadership.
Oh, that was good, Eliza.
Right.
That was really good.
Adam, I practiced, I'm not gonna lie.
Mine is going to be mangier than that.
Do it.
Could
Do it,
almost
Mangy,
be an
because
anchor woman. I directed the movie Anchorman and Anchorman 2, and I'm going to tell you that was impressive. All right, so we're going to do it. I have Stacey Robert Steele here, my producer, who is kind enough, as we're in this sweltering weird heat, to hold the phone out. So let's do it, Stacey.
do it. Do it. You're going to be great.
We do not want this message. The amount
Need
of
the Jeopardy music. Need the Jeopardy music
clear
playing.
indication. Wow, not picking up. Should we try? Or we could try.
Stacey, do you want to try this number? I checked. This number is going to work. Here's the LA office.
Here we go.
310.
Yep.
914.
Yep.
7300.
even with that call not working, we're still talking mere minutes. I'm still good for the 30-day challenge.
We're still not cool, but that's cool.
I love the image of just Diane Feinstein, like
Thank you for calling the
reading People magazine, sitting on a couch while the phone rings.
We apologize for not being able to answer your call, but due to heavy call volumes, all lines are currently full. If you would like to leave a message for Senator Feinstein, please leave your name and zip code after the beep. If you are inquiring about a casework request that you submitted, please call our San Francisco office at 415-393-0707. Thank you and take care.
Hi, my name is Adam McKay. I'm a constituent from Los Angeles, California, and I'm calling to urge Senator Feinstein to do everything in her power to pass the proposed $550 billion climate investment bill that was already passed in the House. Doing so would put the US on track to meet our emission goals under the Paris Agreement, and we are running out of time to deliver on that commitment. As a constituent, this is extremely important to me because according to the UN IPCC report, we have 7.5 years before we cross a deadly threshold where you will start to see systems come apart and millions of people die. I'm a father, I have 2 daughters. I love my daughters, but also the time frame on this is so tight. I don't want to die. And if you're a staffer listening to this, you should push this to the front of the line because this is the issue confronting us all. There's still time to avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis, but we can't delay any longer. And I'm desperately asking Senator Feinstein to please prioritize this legislation. Hey, thanks so much for passing along my concerns, and thank you for everything you do. And please thank Senator Feinstein for her service and leadership.
Yeah.
All right.
How'd that go?
It felt really good. It feels really good. And we know from knowing people that work in DC that it does make a difference, that call is registered, but also it felt great to say that, just to like, that there's some staffer that had to hear that we have 7.5 years before we cross that threshold and that this is that deadly. The idea of doing that for 30 straight days, I'm really excited about it.
I'm right there with you. I think a lot of us are right there with you. So Adam, any words of advice for our audience who are all about to do this?
I think this is a great script. I think it's really succinct. Why do you care is the part where you get to bust out your own emotional dance moves. I would say enjoy it, be honest, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but my sort of mission statement when it comes to climate is I'm just trying to like not be cool. I'm trying to be emotional. I'm scared. I've got pit stains, and I think it's time we start breaking this like we're America or we're the we're the modern world in 2022. We got everything together. We don't. So that's kind of my advice, but everyone should interpret it how they want.
I love it. All right. I'm starting the clock now. Everyone's got 2 minutes. Let's do it. I'm going to call my other senator. I'm going to call Padilla. You're going to call someone else, Adam? Cool. Let's do it. 2 minutes.
Let's do it. Do we have Padilla's number?
I might call the other number.
Okay, we're calling the other number.
The switchboard will get you through to Padilla.
Switchboard. I'll ask for Padilla.
My iPad screen froze, so I can't hit my mute button. So I'm going to walk into the other room to make my call.
I like Cody going into the other room.
Exactly.
He could have quit, but he went into the other room.
To be connected to your senator's office, press or say 1. To be connected to your representative, press or say 2.
I have a funny story about leaving messages, Eliza, once we're done with this.
Could you please repeat that? You have entered 1.
Hold on, I picked up your voice. Hold on.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Senator Alex Padilla. The Washington, D.C. office is currently closed. The office is open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please call back during normal business hours. It's an honor to serve you in the U.S. Senate, and I appreciate your call. This is Senator.
All right. I feel like we need to call it now before we lose everyone. I'm so excited to hear how that went for everyone. So here's what we're gonna do. And this is what we do. This is at the end of all of our Climate Changemakers Hour of Action. Let's everyone take 30 seconds and type how that went for you. How it made you feel, something about the experience. Please type the name of the senator you called. Don't hit enter just yet. We're gonna hit enter all together.
This is one of my favorite parts.
Okay, let's see. All right, I got it. Got it.
And my chat screen is frozen, so I can't type, but I'm excited
All right,
to
let's
read
hit
the
go.
transcript.
Everyone hit enter. Let's see. Adam, let's see what we've got here, huh? We had powerful, amazing, some Californians on the line, but some other states too. What do we have? We had some Georgia, nice. Minnesota, excellent. We had some Washington and some, oh, what did I see some North Carolina? Amazing. Okay, I want to go on, but we are at 6:01 and Adam.
Hey, Eliza, I got to tell you the funniest
You're not
story.
in a rush. I'm not in a rush. Tell me.
This is 25 years ago. I'm in New York City, and Fox News had just started a couple years before, and I'm with a friend, and I'm watching Brit Hume on TV, and he's just spewing misinformation, and I can't believe it. And I tell my friend I'm going to call him, and I call Fox News things, and I'm like, "This is Brit's agent, Ted. Can you give me Brit?" And they're like, "Hold on one second, please." And it goes to a back desk, and they're like, studio, whatever, 8G. And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Brit's agent, Ted. Can you put me through to Brit?" And they're like, "He's on the air now." I'm like, "That's all right. I'll leave a message." And it goes, and it's like, "You reach Brit, beep." And really fast, I just said, "The misinformation you're spewing will destroy democracy. You should be ashamed of yourself. How do you sleep at night?" It was like, for like 3 weeks, I had a high off of that. So I love this 30-day challenge. By the way, we should do it to not only Fox, but CNN, MSNBC, all the media outlets. That might be a nice little addition to throw on, like call the media outlets too. I think that counts for the 30-day challenge. Call your senators,
sure.
Congress people, but you can call your news too and be like, "What are you guys doing? It was 70 degrees above normal in the Antarctic. You didn't cover it." That could be fun too.
It definitely
One of our regular actions at Climate Changemakers that Eliza leads is writing a letter to the editor campaign as well, which is super impactful, right? Like
Love
us
it.
speaking with our voices. So, you show up at Climate Changemakers, you go through a short 20, 30 minute sort of how to, and then at the end of the session you actually start writing your letter to the editor.
Love that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we do that. And we also do like the gold standard, which is we schedule, prepare for, and take constituent meetings with congressional staffers. That's the gold standard, right? So we do different things every week on our hours of action, always never boring. So Adam, it was huge pleasure. Thank you for spending an hour with us, really. And not only spending the time, but the collective action piece is the juice. It's the juice. And I'm so excited that we had this opportunity together. I'm so excited to kick off your 30-day challenge. I'm excited to do it with you. And we want to invite all of you folks, and Adam, you too, to join our Hours of Action. We do this every single week. It's different every week. We're taking action every week. This is like a team sport. This is a weekly thing. Picture like a drop-in facilitated co-working session on Zoom. That's what our Hours of Action are. So let's see. Anytime you show up, we would so love to have you. Anytime.
Well, I think we'll have, like I said, our production company, Hyper Object Productions, we're dedicated towards this new era that we're entering. So I'd love to have our company jump in, people from our company. I'll come back. I think it's awesome what you guys are doing. This is great.
Yes, that's cool. We are very much not cool. We're just doing the thing. So thank you so much. And Cody, can you say a word about MCJ too?
Yeah, for sure. For those of you who want to just go deep on your learning journey, MCJ Collective, we have a member community that you can join. There's Slack conversations. My partner, Jason, hosts a really great podcast called My Climate Journey. People in the Slack talk about that. They talk about other issues that are going on. You can go to mcjcollective.com/members, read more about it, join up from there. So anyone who wants to find your tribe and be part of it, join both. Climate Changemakers for the action side, MCJ for climate innovation and just general climate topics. We'd love to have anyone here who's not part of our respective communities to join us, please.
Roll up our sleeves. So thank you everyone so much. Adam, thank you. It was a huge pleasure. Everyone have a super evening. Thanks for staying late with us. Thanks for doing the actual work, rolling up the sleeves, and hope to see you on an Hour of Action soon. And Adam, I want updates on your 30-day challenge. Twitter.
I'm doing it. I'm going to tweet it out in about 5 minutes. Let's do it. Yep.
Love it.
Love it.
Thanks, everybody.
Love it. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Adam. Bye.